They carry books. They wear black robes and faces swallowed by shadow beneath wide-brimmed black hats. They come when the appointed time arrives to collect the one already named. The judgment has already been made. They only carry it out through records and procedure. They call your name 3 times, then you must follow. In Korea, death is not a hunt, it is a confirmation. Not a disaster that picks someone and descends without warning, but the quiet reading of a final line already written. Tonight, I want to talk about the Jeoseung Saja, the messengers of the afterlife, the ones who lead the dead into the next world, and with them, 3 stories. A man who became a messenger of death, a man who cheated death for far too long, and a man who was called by death in error. Long ago, on Jeju Island, there lived a man named Gangrim. He was a low-ranking guard in the magistrate's office, an ordinary man in a village where nothing ever happened. Then one day, a death no one could explain fell upon the village. 3 sons from a wealthy household had returned after passing the state examination, bringing great honor to their family. As they bowed before their parents, in that very instant, all 3 dropped dead. The mother, having lost all 3 sons, threw herself before the magistrate. "This is unjust. Find the reason for these deaths." But how could a magistrate of the living know the affairs of the dead? So at last, he summoned Gangrim. "You will go to the underworld," he said, "and bring Yeomra Daewang, the king of the underworld." For a living man, it was an impossible command. Gangrim went home and told his wife everything. She did not give herself over to fear. Instead, she prepared rice cakes with care and prayed to the guardian spirits of the house. "Open the sealed road," she begged. "Do not let my husband lose himself on the path to the dead." Gangrim crossed beyond the edge of the living world. He passed over water, followed roads that split without end, and walked through the smell of wet earth and the breath of damp wind. At last, he stood before Yeomra Daewang. He cast a red binding rope, bound the king of the underworld, and demanded that he come with him to the world above. For a long while, the king of death regarded him with a look full of curiosity. Then he rose and followed him back to the world of the living. Only then did the hidden truth of the brothers' deaths come to light. Long ago, their parents had killed 3 children from a faraway land for the sake of wealth and cast their bodies into a pond. Years passed. The dead returned. Those 3 wronged souls were reborn as the sons of that very house. And on the day of greatest joy, at the height of honor and pride, they returned death to the ones who had once given it. Yeomra Daewang exposed the hidden crime, and the resentment knotted there for so long was finally released. The matter was ended. But Yeomra Daewang did not send Gangrim back to ordinary life. "You are too gifted," he said, "to remain only a clerk of the living." And so, Gangrim's soul went below, and he became one of the Jeoseung Saja. Yeomra Daewang placed in his hands a red death warrant bearing the names and lifespans of men. "Bring them," he said, "in the order written in the register." And here, the tale grows stranger still. Gangrim had once been human, and human imperfection does not vanish so easily. One day, as Gangrim rested, exhausted from the long road, a crow flew down beside him and whispered, "Shall I deliver it for you?" Gangrim trusted it. He handed the warrant to the crow. But the crow dropped it in flight. Panicked, it flew about crying out names at random. That, people say, is why children sometimes die before their parents, the young before the old. The wicked live long, and the gentle are taken early, all because of a single failure in delivery. And the living go on, spending their lives inside the consequences of that mistake. Death may be thrown into confusion, but it does not disappear. If your name is written, they will come. Beings that ought to be cold and absolute can be, at times, unexpectedly human. If hungry, they stop at a meal. If shown kindness, they may hesitate. At times, they even take pity on the sorrows of the dying. That is why the tale of Dongbangsak is still told. He had already lived far longer than any man should. No one knew why, not his neighbors, not the monks who passed through his village. One night, the Jeoseung Saja came for him. A feast laid out for him. Sandals, new and unworn, a string of coins, tied and ready. He sat, he ate, he put on the new shoes. A debt, once eaten, cannot be unpaid. Before he left, he drew a brush from his sleeve and bent over the register, the page where every living name waits its turn. Dongbangsak's line read 30 gupja, 1800 years. Already strange for one lifetime. The brush touched down. One stroke through the character for 10 turned it into the character for 1,000. 30 became 3,000. 1800 years became 180,000. And he left. Mountains wore themselves down. Rivers changed their names more times than men changed their kings. Dongbangsak remained. At last, Yeomra Daewang summoned Gangrim. Bring me that old man. A man who has lived that long is not easily caught. He knows too much of the world. He reads the hearts of others too well. He senses danger before it arrives. Gangrim understood this. To face him directly would only invite the same trick again. He knelt by a stream instead, a basket of charcoal beside him, and began to wash it, one stone, and then the next, day after day. Then one day, a white-haired old man slowed his step, studied the strange sight, and asked, "Young man, what on earth are you doing?" Gangrim answered as calmly as ever, "The charcoal is too black. I thought that if I washed it long enough it might turn white." The old man burst into laughter. "I have lived for 3,000 gupja," he said, "and never once have I seen such a fool trying to wash charcoal white." Gangrim lifted his head. "It's you." The one who meant to stay hidden had revealed himself with his own mouth. The register finally closed, the ink finally dry. A man lived, ordinary, in a village. He was not sick. He was not hurt. He had no reason to die that night. That day, too, he was closing out an ordinary day. Then, outside the door, someone called his name. Once, he thought nothing of it. Twice, he turned toward the door, and there, his spine went cold. Outside stood a man in black. A robe that swallowed the light, a ledger in his hand. A Jeoseung Saja. The Jeoseung Saja opened the ledger and called the name a third time, quietly. The man collapsed. His soul followed the Jeoseung Saja down a road. The road was not one the living walked. Fog lay low. The ground beneath his feet was damp. Somewhere far off, the sound of running water drifted, faint. He walked, how long he did not know, until he reached a riverbank. Samdocheon, the river dividing the world of the living from the world of the dead. He waded through the mist and crossed the river. And beyond it, before the gate of the underworld, officials sat in a row, ledgers and brushes in hand. His turn came at last. One official opened the ledger, read the name, and stopped. Not this one. The name matched. The village was close enough, but the soul they were meant to take was someone else. A name misheard. A wrong soul taken. The Jeoseung Saja turned and led him back down the fog-bound road. The man woke in his own body, breath rushing back into him all at once. Those in the room screamed when the man they thought dead opened his eyes. He came back, but not the same as before. Since then, he smelled wet earth every night, and sometimes in the mirror saw someone else's face. When someone called his name from outside the door, however familiar the voice, he could not answer easily. So people say, a name called from outside your door is not a thing to take lightly. Death sometimes loses its way, but it does not vanish. As long as a name is written down, they come, eventually. Another night, another story from beyond another door. If you wish to meet more dark tales and the hidden dead, join this rite. Subscribe, listen to the bells,